Hello everyone, and welcome to the DM's Travel Book Club, a guide to the planes.
Hey.
Each episode we explore the planes of existence as outlined in the Great Wheel cosmology in the role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons. With me, I'm Fiona, and this is Hamilton. Hello. Hamilton.
Hello.
So Hamilton, it's new series, new us, I guess. Mm-hmm. What is the first topic of choice? What plane are we looking at today?
Where else can you start than with chaos? When you're around me, what else is it going to be? It's going to be chaos. And then on top of that, where else in the chaotic realms can you start but the abyss, basically, on the planes of chaos? So we are travelling to the infinite depths that are the abyss. A plane of, basically, on this alignment chart that is the Great Wheel, the ultimate chaotic evil alignment that there is. It's not a nice place. I'm gonna, as I said to you, I'm gonna give a bit of copy from the Planescape manual.
Give us a description. What is the abyss?
Well, this is something that I think describes it more like emotionally than what it actually is. And then I'll give you a bit of a lowdown. But this kind of gives the sort of understanding of how hard it is to be in the abyss. So the abyss is cruel as death and hungrier than the grave. Many rattle their bone boxes, but here's the chant. There's no secret police in the hidden places and ruined landscapes of the abyss. No ordered state like the Nine Hells or Bator as it's known. No informers watching every mood, but death is still always nigh. Aside from the random violence of Tanari'i, true blood minds their own back. Whoa. So it is very much a evil landscape. It is, but in that it has a semblance of laws, I'd say, because there is still some sort of ruling class, and there's a caste-like system to the beings that live on this plane. But unlike the Nine Hell, but it is chaotic, and one may think you can make a deal with a demon, but they're unlike a devil who is bound by those contractual laws and loves that sort of power battle. They will just change their mind and completely just go back on it. It's a very chaotic place, and with that is everyone has heard of the abyss in multiple mythologies. It comes up as it's based on a lot of those, but like them, it is something that is infinite and ever growing. Actually, in some ways it sort of, we'll get more onto how that occurs, but it's ever changing, ever growing. It has multiple layers that have never all been canonized. They tried to do that. There is, I think, 600 or 800 and something. I've forgotten the exact number.
Various layers.
Yes.
Well, and that is an interesting thing. As we'll go through these planes, there's always going to be references to how many layers each plane has and stuff. Obviously, as you said, the 9 hells, there's 9 layers there. Mount Celestia, there's 7 layers. And here it's just infinite. And there's a great quote from the DM's guide that says, just think of it like a cake, essentially. And there's the idea of an infinite layered cake. That to me just sounds chaotic. I've never, I'm not one for going on Bake Off or anything like that. But if you presented an infinite layered cake to the judges, it's a showstopper. Is it one you want to eat?
No, no, exactly. No, I like that. It is definitely a showstopper, and I think that point is like the infinitism of it, the infiniteness of it is kind of hard to grasp, and I think it tries to explain it. Like, people say layers like the 948th and the 372nd. That doesn't mean that's like below or above the 372nd isn't below the 371st or whatever. It's like it just happens to be the next one they found by falling into a portal or falling over one edge or jumping into it by accident into these different planes. So they are three-dimensionally, or maybe even more dimensionally, encapsulated around one another, and they sort of merge into each other in ways that is not that clear. I think it's I'm going to bring this up, we'll probably bring this up again. It's very much like something that people might know more of is the Feywild, and that sort of sense that those, and I think all the planes have this idea of space and distance and time is something that's not considered the same as it is on the material plane. And as such, if you start thinking too much one way, or you start acting certain ways, or as things occur around you, you may just fall into this layer without even pretty much noticing it. That's
absolutely. I love that imagery you just painted of like they're not, you know, like space and time are different things, and that one could easily be around another layer and stuff. And that to me, and I think we spoke about this before off recording. For me, the Abyss, I can't imagine it. It's one of those things where I feel as a DM, it's cool to describe, but I can't actually visually see it or put it. And I think that's the beauty of certainly the Abyss, is this, that it's so chaotic that you describe something, you just say a sentence and it makes no sense. Exactly. And I think being able to do that if you're running a game in the Abyss, and just be able to say these things, it's, you know, and I think the players, if they go, I don't understand what that means, it's probably not good. I think that's what I like about that. And just to go on to this other point that you sort of briefly mentioned, this idea of power, and I think you really get this with this sort of chaotic nature of the Abyss. It's all the denizens and the demon lords and everything said about it, their key thing, their main drive, their main want, their sort of motivation is power, and getting that power by whatever means. So as you were saying before, this idea of like, well, maybe we can do some deals and stuff, either getting power or directly confronting a demon lord as a power move is such a thing in this thing. So again, making those sort of notes to yourself as a DM, sort of putting out what can I do with the concept of power, and how does it manifest itself to me as a DM, but also to players as well. Like, is there a powerful, in quotation marks, player in the group that you like, what would be great to undermine their power and like show them like demonish or demonized versions of themselves, or that what they think is what they want, and all that sort of thing in the Abyss, which you can easily do.
100%. Well, then with that, I think we've given a brief introduction to what the plane is just overall. But we've got a fun little way that we're gonna go about this, which is sort of giving some little title cards. So it's just going to explain ourselves as we go through on this one, but you'll get into it. So we've done an intro. We sort of explained it's chaotic evil. It's a bit it's infinite, and it's not a nice place. But
survival is not great.
Yeah. So we sort of touched on the first topic, which is geography. So the geography of it, we've said is infinite, but what is the sort of like what is the sort of main climate of it? Like, what's the main visage that you get? You said it's hard to imagine, but if you were going to describe if we start with the main plane, so there is a starting plane, isn't there? But beyond, there's multiple from it. There's an entry level, and the entry level is the plane of infinite portals. Plane is in a PLAIN rather than a plane in itself. And that is described as a sort of a long, open expanse of multiple infinite tunnels, portals, gates, access ways, falling off cliffs into other layers of the Abyss and other places as well. You know, you can get to Sigil from here. You can get to the Vator. You can get there's the river Styx runs through, which is something we will talk about more, I think, as an individual. But it's
absolutely,
which is a river that runs through all the lower planes and connects a load of those together, and also these iron fortresses which are homes to demon lords. But the sky is red and filled with a blaring red sun. So how would you describe it to your players if you're saying, here we go, you're in the Abyss? How would you start off?
Oh God, I guess that
I chucked you in it.
You've chucked me in it, but I guess for me, because here's the thing, like I said, I really struggle to imagine the sky being red, which I know is such a weird concept, but maybe that's just me. But that idea of sort of the broiling things, I think the main thing I got from reading and sort of researching the Abyss, as one does as a day job, is the whole terrain of each infinite layer, even the one you start on, this layer of portals, it's uninhabitable. You barely eat for survival. It talks about, certainly in the Planescape book, the Planes of Chaos book, it talks about it. There's only sort of two kinds of people that sort of live here. It's the quick and the dead. That you have to literally, you would be in and out. So again, this idea of the plane of infinite portals, it's this constant activity of people rushing in and out, and I think it's that bustling and hustling thing, but it's not a joyful one. It's people getting in, doing a raid or whatever, and then getting out of there as soon as possible, because whatever you can get here would be probably super valuable on other planes. So this idea
like
of
Monument Station.
Oh, you know what? That's such a London-centric thing. But yes, Monument Station, Bank Station.
No one wants to be London. There. You're just in. You want to get in and you want to get out because it's an absolute maze, and it's just.
Yes, you know what? That is actually it's a good sort of description actually. This idea, like in certainly the Bank Station, in most tube stations in London, it's the idea that you're crammed into packed, tight tunnels. People are shoving and getting in the way.
Power struggles for who's going to get on the train first, who's in the way.
Get on the train
doors.
first, who's going to get off the train first.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that idea. Actually describing certainly maybe the plane of infinite portals as rush hour on the tube in London, or any big commuter city. Yeah, just idea that you just So rather than this, I imagine this infinite landscape, but there's just so many people in and out. Oh, that gives me anxiety just even thinking.
Yeah, I know.
But I love that as an idea.
Exactly.
That sort of grounds it into something for me now. I'm instantly like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah. Whereas before, like, I just was imagining this sort of desolate wasteland with people popping in and out and stuff. Whereas that, I actually feel that sort of anxiety and the chaotic nature of, like, you don't know, you gotta, because then you have a motive to get in and out. You know, you've got to get to point A and point B.
You know that there's going to be some vulture-like creature flying in the air that is about to jump down and, like, turn you into food, basically. And so you need to be in and out of there as quick as you possibly can.
And I just to quickly finish up, in the Planes of Chaos, it talks about the sort of 3 priorities that you have if you are on this plane, if you find yourself on here, and it talks about surviving the layers terrain, so that's any of the infinite layers, and avoid being eaten, and find food which hasn't been fouled in some way. I think all 3 of those work for any subway station as well.
Well, very true.
Don't eat from that kiosk. That's always on.
Exactly. Yeah.
on a platform.
Coffee.
Yeah. We all know who you meant.
We know who you meant. So that is the geography of it. I think we sort of moved on to the sort of population then a bit. So let's go on to population.
Yes.
So the key denizens then of the plane are the Tanari'i, as they're known colloquially, or in Dungeons and Dragons. To those uninitiated, that means demons. So that's the term for demons in that. So how does that manifest in itself in this chaotic evil way? Like what makes the Tanari'i, Fiona, to you, like an encapsulation of that? Because on all the planes, the inhabitants themselves are very much an expression, as much as the geography, as much as the temperament of things is the expression of what this plane is. So how do they do that?
Yeah, so for me, it sort of comes across, again, that idea of power, and that everyone's always scrabbling for the tiniest bit of power, like almost like fighting over the bit of gristle that's been dropped from a table and stuff like that. What I found really interesting, though, obviously, the more powerful these folk get, they become more powerful demons, and they almost like evolve and morph into things. And I, again, getting very strong Pokemon vibes.
I was about to say, like, really evil Pokemon.
Yeah, really evil. I mean, obviously, I feel like that is grounding them to maybe a silly extent, but this idea that you enter and you have a guide or a helper that is a part of is a denizen of this place, but they get just a little bit more, and then suddenly they are much more powerful than the rest of the party. Or you're doing a deal with a demon, but you're dealing with their subordinates or their sort of dog's body, as it were, and then suddenly they just sort of turn on the demon lord themselves, and that's the sort of thing. This idea of it's chaotic, it's powerful, and selfishness. Like, there's no rhyme or reason for it. Yeah, there's no. It is no loyalty at all. It is just like, in this moment, this is how I feel, and it's not like judging oneself or what's the consequence of that. I'm doing this now for me, and so that's how I see these sort of creatures. It's almost like, again, could be very body horror in a way, that they sort of sprout extra
very
arms and limbs.
Is.
So again, if that's something that you were very aware of whilst you're playing your games, or just checking in with your players, because again, I'm a big fan of describing these things, but in the sense of, like, if I describe it, it is just too overwhelming because I can't even process the image, so I'm like, that's okay. Yeah. Whereas some people will be like, oh, that is too visual for me. So that's the only thing I think with these these denizens, I would be like, okay, there's definitely body horror elements. There's always morphing, or just always, it is just disgusting. I know we'll probably
and they're not nice. Like, they are, like, so in one of my shows we're doing In the Abyss, and so this worked out very well, but we were fighting a Boulezao, I think that's how you pronounce it. We know we love our pronunciation thing, which is so again, spoilers for anyone now that we're going to start talking about some things that are probably a bit body horror, so I'm just going to warn people there. This is the Abyss, so that's where we are. But yeah, so Boulezao, goat-headed creature, humanoid, and their description in the monster manual is they crave violence. They breed off violence. They are even so enamored by violence that their own death becomes like a sort of pleasure, not pleasurable, but like something they are expecting and eager for as much as anything. So like, so when I was playing these characters, like as a DM, I was thinking like, okay, so like when they're being hit, they're equally as excited by the fact that they're even bleeding. Do you know what I mean? They're actually like, that's great. And then even when someone dies, I sort of like said they whooped. You know, they're whooping and howling. Like, this is like, you know, trying to give that sort of, they are very, and I think that bestial quality, which is kind of given in the characterization of them, that they are very much like take a humanoid form and then twist it and morph it in a sort of bestial manner. So like a goat head, or there's a sort of bullish like there's bull, like a bullish centaur-y kind of character. There's like a huge there's these sort of wasp humans, you know, that are the chasme or chasme, I don't know how you again chasm,
pronunciations.
Chasme, characters, and so, you know, and then there's gloppy things which are very gloopy, and there's obviously like demon lords, like a lot of people know Lolth is a very famous demon lord, so like spider body, spider queen, so it's, as you said, body horror but very bestial sort of thing, like definitely
lots of it's like, again, another famous demon lord is the Demogorgon. It's the idea of a creature with two heads fighting over stuff, and I think they've got this is where my knowledge might run out a little bit, it's been a little while, but tentacle arms and all that sort of thing, and just it's this idea of just describing creatures almost matter-of-factly. Again, that sort of idea, you'd be like, it looks like it's got a goat's head and all this sort of thing, and if just describing it like that, it gets to a point where like there are too many limbs, or there are too many aspects to it that you can't even pick them all out as a player. And again, I just like I find that really intriguing. So it does actually, I think with all the Abyss, the big thing I get out of it is that you can make so much up. You know, it certainly from reading about it, so it gives you this amazing thing, like it's infinite. You can come up with your own plane, you can come up with your own denizens, and you know, you can reskin any like stat blocks for that, and it doesn't matter. And I think it's, to start on this plane for our series, I actually think it's really exciting because there's just so much potential. Even if I find like the idea of chaotic evil layer like unfathomable as a person anyway, but I'm just like, there's so much you could do with it. So no,
I totally agree, and I think that's something that I found running it, so I that's a really good point to make. And I think that's again why I'm going to keep bringing it up. That sort of Feywild connection is very much the same. Like when you feel like you get given the Feywild as something that we've looked at in the past and we'll look at again, you can come at it and you feel like, I can make my own version of this. Do you know what I mean? Like I can make my own domain of delight, or vice versa, the domain of dread. It's very similar sort of vein to that. So I would say, that's what's quite fun about the Abyss. That sort of feeling that your personality or whatever you want to bring to it it's your really go for it.
Your version of it as well. I love that.
So then, moving on to the next topic, politics. So we've sort of touched on it, but it's I think, as you mentioned, it's unlike Battle or the Nine Hells, which we'll talk about later, where it's very much there's an organized case system. There's you're at the bottom, you're at the top, and you make your way up by, you know, getting more power and getting more souls, and we'll get into it in more detail. Whilst on this plane, it seems to be much more about power, corruption, gaining power purely for power's sake, and at any cost, any way. No, it doesn't matter what way you gain it. It just means that you've done it, and that is by all the evil things you can think of. Again, warnings again. People do bad things on this plane in order to gain power.
My notes include no such thing as a pleasant trip to the Abyss, which I think is very true. And I think it comes to that quote, which was it power corrupts absolutely, and I just, again, that idea of corruption everywhere, it corrupts the landscape stuff, but this idea that the more power something gets, like he was saying, it just maybe, I don't know, the skin of it changes, or, you know, it that sort of thing where it grows in power, but also it becomes more hideous, more unappeasing and stuff. And I just that's what it is for me, this idea that corruption, it equals power and greed, and it's the driving force between all the different demon lords. As you've mentioned one already, Lolth, the sort of the goddess, a big drow goddess, obviously, but also like this idea of her domain of a spider's web and trapping people in. I really like that. And actually, all the demon lords that we've sort of mentioned, obviously Baphomet, you know, the Demogorgon I've already mentioned, Duplex, I believe that's how you pronounce it. Duplex. Yeah. So we, again, our big thing, obviously, on DM's book club, our sort of original show, is that we are terrible at pronouncing things, so apologies in advance. But Zugamoy or Zutamoy, depending on how you pronounce it, this sort of queen of fungi and fungi. I feel like there's also, certainly in the Planes of Chaos book, the Planescape book, there's so many of them. Obviously in 5th edition it sort of narrows it down a little bit as to give you ideas, but there were so many things about gods of like bullywugs, beholders, giants that are trapped in these planes, and I was just like, ooh. So if you had now obviously you can be playable races for pretty much any race you would like, but imagine if you went to the Hells and you discovered a god that is of your sort of your lineage or anything like that. That would be great. I'd love to meet a bullywug god in their own lair or anything like that, and describe what kind of environment would that be. And certainly I know one of my favourite planes, reading through this, even though it's a very small paragraph, and I'm sure we'll go into all of these ones, was the realm of many eyes, or millions of eyes, or whatever it was. And it's just a beholder plane, and that sounds awful.
Yes.
But also amazing.
Amazing at the same time. Yeah, going back to our Spelljammer and how much we love the sort of beholder tyrant ships with these ideas of all these beholders just living together. It's quite scary as well. But I think you made a point with the corruption, bringing up the corruption and the power thing, and how that sort of balances itself both ways. So like, you do corrupting things to gain power, but as you gain power you start to corrupt the land around you more and more and have an effect on it. And so like, and as you said, like so once you gain these levels until you get to the highest point, which is becoming a demon lord of your realm, or you've gained enough power and influence that you start to affect the world around you in your own image, basically. And that's how the abyss can even grow, is that if someone is even like hanging out in battle as a demon and gets or is god or any of the other planes and gets somehow survives there and is powerful enough, they could take ownership of that part of the land and it just becomes subsumed by the abyss in itself. And so that sort of corrupting nature of it, and there's one I wanted to pick up that talks about it quite beautifully, which is the worm realm. And it just kind of gave a really good example of like what this sort of, how that sort of works. And it goes, so it's a set of endlessly twisting tunnels dug from constantly collapsing clay, earth and stone. The mole god of evil gnomes who digs out from each collapse, the realm grinds up most visitors and suffocates and poisons the rest. Its inhabitants are gnome petitioners, manes and purple worms. Oddly, many of the creatures of the world realm suffer from florid, fungal and cancerous growths that rot the victim from within after 2 to 12 months. Long-term visitors of the realm eventually contract this disease as well. Speculation among them is that the disease is a result of a feud between this god of the gnomes and Zugtmoy, who is the god, the demon lord of fungus. So it's kind of like, it sort of says it's got this worm layer, it's got this very much of its own self, but because there's a demon lord nearby with influence who's in a feud with them, they're infecting it with their own infections, and it's just like, it's just layers of luck, if you know what I mean.
Mixing it up. Yeah, well, and again, we've covered in a previous DM's book club about gnomes and this god in particular, this a very fascinating origin story. And again, anything like this where you're like, wonder what that's about, having a look at those origin stories and seeing like, what does that influence it? So yeah, Urdell's the mole god of the gnomes. It's a fascinating story. I highly recommend checking that out. But I guess, yeah, for me, this idea of these, it feels very much, as you've already sort of pointed out, there's a Feywild, because again, it's always based on the Archfays, their sort of influence and sort of character. Here it's the same thing, so it's all, I do feel like this is a proper reflection of the Feywild in corruption form, but like taken to the nth degree. So yeah, I definitely see that sort of comparison now that you've mentioned it.
I feel like, and it's kind of interesting because the Feywild and the Shadowfell are both very new into the Great Wheel cosmology. They weren't around before, and I think what the Feywild is, and I can't remember the exact lore of it was a split in the negative and positive planes that caused this sort of this split, but it's like if we talk about this realm and brought a Borea in and some more of the sort of like that land and shoved these to, or you know, on Arcadia and all those sort of like more elemental sort of more rolling hills lands and mix them with the abyss, you get the Feywild. And I think that's kind of how that idea was born out. But this is very much all the worst sides to the Feywild.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So yeah, so like we were saying, so like this idea of the politics and the sort of the way people get ahead, it is this power and this status coming from spilling of blood and all this sort of thing. So I think, again, if you were trying to nail down what that was, those are the two key things I would definitely go for as a driving force. If you're not sure if you're playing NPC demons or demon lords, it's like, go to this first.
The only other one to mention then with politics as well, which is about gaining influence, is the furtherness of that influence. So demon lords and greater demons take pleasure in then getting themselves, they've dealt with the land in front of them, they then want to go to the material plane, gain followers, corrupt them, and corrupt as many people and all the planes as they so wish. And you know, the thing that we will talk, so that's sort of a material plane aspect. So there's a lot of demon lords basically live in their towers in these fortresses, protected by those that they subjugate, so that they can go wandering the astral plane into different planes and start corrupting people by giving them some power, but using it just to sort of cause chaos everywhere.
Yeah, this idea of being able to slip free and just infect and spread. And yeah, I think we talked about this off recording as well. It's like, you know, one of the most common hooks in role-playing games and certainly D&D is like, a cult's trying to bring a demon lord through, and you're like, and obviously now knowing all this stuff, why would they do that? Like, it's not like you have any power over it, but of course you hear this all the time as a thing. So for me, knowing that, and obviously there is the D&D 5th edition modules, and I'm sure there's loads of other adventures before people write in and tell us otherwise, but obviously Out of the Abyss deals with several of these demon lords coming to the material plane, and how do you deal with them? And again, the answer for me is like, you don't. You run. You run.
Because even if you kill them on the material plane, they just go back to the abyss and they wake up. The only way to kill a demon is to kill them on their plane. That's the only way. So,
interesting.
The other thing as well that we will probably make more of a point on in politics is the blood war, and I think we will need to do a whole thing on that. But there is basically, in simple terms, there is a war between the demons and the devils, basically, in very simple terms. And we will probably cover that in another episode because it's a whole raft of things. But yes, their desire for power does not, just as I said, does not sit on this one plane of existence. No. They want all of them. And first up is getting rid of the devils and taking over the hells. So, but yeah. So the next up on our thing is special effects. Special effects. What special? Like, yeah. Let's get some. I'll have to get some fancy VFX things going on now. Special effects. But yeah, the planes in themselves, they have effects. We mentioned that in that worm realm, you can be corrupted by an infection based on living on that plane for some time. But there is also a general corrupting presence of being on the abyss, which can adjust your alignment, even if you're so unfortunate, to a point where you become chaotic evil if you aren't already. Which is not good. Well, it depends. Depends if you want that. Some of your characters, it could be a fun roleplay mechanic. I have it for sure.
I guess because that's always been the thing for me, and I'm sure we've discussed this before. But I always try and shy people away from chaotic evil characters, certainly at the beginning, just because like there's a lot to do and a lot to process and stuff. But for something like this, I think it could be really interesting in terms of a one shot and stuff. Like in DM's Guide, they talk about optional rules for these things. So there's one called Abyssal Corruption. So a non-evil visitor that finishes a long rest in the abyss must make a DC 10 charisma saving throw, which you would assume most people would make. I think by the time you get to the abyss, you hopefully should be in a higher
level 5 characters in the abyss right now.
Really? Level 5? Okay, whoops. And if they fail it, there's the Abyssal Corruption table, which you just roll a d10, and you get sort of gain following flaws, so like treachery, bloodlust, overwhelming ambition. But on a 10 is the one I quite like, is demonic possession. The character is possessed by a demonic entity until freed by a dispel evil and good spell or similar magic. When a possessed character rolls a 1 on an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, the demon takes control of the character and determines the character's behaviour. And at each of their sort of turns, they can make a DC 15 charisma saving throw, and they gain control until they roll another 1. So that's quite an interesting combat mechanic. But I love the idea that you just go, okay, you roll a 10, give me your character sheet, and then you play them for the rest until something happens.
It's quite incredible, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, there's so many other things, like someone that I've got as a character in our show has read the mind of a demon lord and therefore has gone mad, because that's what can happen if you fail that save. So if you try and read their minds, if you try and contact other planes, it's a thing that happens, and worse off if it's someone in the abyss. So don't do that as a regular basis. And the other things, like it has the river Styx, we'll talk about that. But if you you get a bit thirsty around there, you forget everything. That's basically
that's you done for, isn't it?
That's you done for. And there's I think and there's if you look at the Planescape book, and we won't go into it, there are ways that you can manage like magical effects and how magic is heightened and lowered on there. I think the easiest one is the fact that you can start adding wild magic surges to everything if you so wish, and wild magic gets very powerful whilst if you're more good aligned, it's not a fun place to be. So there's very much those are the sort of key effects. Is there anything else that you think in terms of that special effects part of it?
I think it's you've kind of mentioned it in the sense of magic itself. Magic itself draws attention to you.
Oh yes.
Because they see it as a big threat, and even say, and certainly in the Planescape Planes of Chaos book, it talks about all the different scores and what it means. If you cast a spell of this one, and I think that's just fascinating reading anyway. But the idea that you do a little spell, people are going to know. That idea that you bring attention to you. So obviously, if you pop into existence, you're like, okay, we need to make an escape now. We need to plane shift, or we need to do a big fireball to get rid of whatever creatures attacking us. More people will know, and that you stand out. And I think that's the key thing. Is as soon as you stand out, the demon lords will find you and you will attract their attention. And even the littlest bit of magic, they can see it as an offense to them, and offense to their sort of standing and stuff. So I just think that's really interesting. Another part, which unfortunately I can't find where it's from now, unfortunately, so forgive me for that. This idea of using a demon's name as powerful magic, and I know this is a general sort of folklore thing anyway. As soon as you know the name of someone, you can control it or possess it in some way. And I just love that idea. It's like finding out a demon's true name, like you were sort of saying, like reading someone's mind or anything like that. Like at what cost would that be? That you can control a demon, but for how long? And is it, because that's something that for them is so powerful. It's a well-guarded secret. So I think playing on that aspect of it, because there's always one player that always goes, what do I know about the Abyss? And you're like, okay, roll. And then they get a really low roll, but you can add some flavor stuff in. So I think name stuff is always quite fun, because then maybe they're tempted then to find out the names of demons to see if they can control them and all that sort of thing.
Names is a very important thing on the Feywild as well. It's a very important thing in other planes as well. But yeah, having the true name of a demon gives you ultimate control over it. So that is quite a fun. I'm also using that as a tagline in my game. But I think that's so. Doesn't sound great. So the next reason is because this is a travel book club. Yes. Why would I want to go to the Abyss then? Why would I? What's the special attraction? What's the favourite attraction? Why on earth would you end up there?
Why on earth would you end up
without being for accident?
I think this is the interesting thing, right? So a lot of the planes we're going to talk about, I know what I'm going to say instantly is like, oh, you need to be of a certain level, blah 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 blah. But maybe that's not true. Maybe, as you've sort of indicated, that you could be a lower level, and it is just a brief visit to go get something, to go fetch an item as a courier request or anything, and go to one of these gate villages or gate places where they're just on the other side of the portal, and you go and experience this town for a brief time. And I think that's the key way to go through it. I guess if you didn't want to have a whole campaign set in the Abyss or anything like that, doing little hooks like here and there, maybe being those sort of scavenger parties, because I feel like certainly the Abyss, it seems to me that because you should only be there for a short time before all these horrible things happen to you. You should be there going, okay, we need to find something or find someone and bring it back. We are stealing something. We are, finding a relic or something that will help us defeat a demon lord elsewhere, or we need to save our friends, or we need to kill someone, but it can only be done with a certain magical item that this demon lord has, and all that sort of thing. So I think it's always about getting something or taking something for these particular lists. Like I don't think it is we'll just go for a jolly weekend away in Plague Town.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I think the other things that people talk about in this is that weapons are very powerful.
Yes.
And so there's things like demon ichor is the sort of puddle that they make when they die, because they don't just leave bodies, they leave a puddle of black goo. And that, if you put that on your blade, is very powerful against denizens of evil and good. It's a very powerful thing you can apply to your blade. But also, that we, as we mentioned in our advertisement for this, there's lakes of molten iron that they use for making demon touch blades, which are ridiculously powerful. They have, positive that you can do a lot of damage and more effects. So and it's cheap as well, because no one really wants to go there. So you can get good, powerful items for cheap. And there's other things, and also you might just want to go and kill a demon and steal their crown and become a demon lord. That's the other reason. But
so any adventure in the Abyss is like high risk but high reward. So it's one of those things where, again, as with all adventures, and I know it's like me as a broken record, but checking in with your players saying, is this something you want to do? We want to play a game in the Abyss. Here's the type of adventure it's going to be. Is everyone okay? Because we've all played games where we're like, well, it's not going anywhere, stuff like that. With this sort of a game in the Abyss, I can imagine being high pace, high anxiety, which I love, but I'm glad I know about it before I go in. That's something going, exactly. oh god, because it's just so much happening, and you've got because like you said, like at any moment you could be just a smear on the windscreen, the abyssal windscreen, as a demon lord just plows through your party.
So true. And that is it in a nutshell, I think, really. So I think then we have covered most of our main topics.
Yes. Yeah.
Go on. No, go on, please.
I was going to say the big thing for me that I really like, certainly from the Players of Chaos book, is that there's, again, with all these books, I do think they're amazingly well written and there's a great narrative for them, but I like how, certainly in this one, there was like a brief catalogue of survivable planes. Again, these are little paragraphs of giving you ideas for stuff that you could jump out of. So I've already sort of mentioned one of the Beholder plane, the realm of a million eyes, although I'm sure I'm saying that wrong because I've not looked at it. Yeah, no, realm of a million eyes, I got it right this time. Obviously the demon web pits. There's one that's a plane for troglodytes, or that's what it is. So it's like rotting flesh, which sounds awful, but again, that sort of thing where you could, any of these things, there's a prison of various mad gods, and there's always famous ones like the Gaping Maw, which is the Demogorgon's plane, and
which has just got depths are ruled by Kraken, Ichichachitil, and Demogorgons, and you're like, wow. Okay, that's fun. That's a nice little swim in the sea, isn't it?
My favourite one that's mentioned in the DM's guide is the Endless Maze, which is Baphomet's lair. It's just a never-ending dungeon, and of course he is like a huge sort of a Minotaur type character as well. So this idea that you are on that Greek island and you're like running away from this horrific thing that's in this sort of what's it called, a ziggurat palace. Ziggurat Palace, there you go. And it's just confusing hallways and stuff like that. So again, that's such a different way of thinking of like chaotic. It feels like you're trapped in that 95 Windows screensaver, right? And you're like, that's how I would describe it. But it's also chaotic, and it's different to the other planes. So yeah, again, having a look at those survivable planes, because obviously, and as you sort of mentioned, it numbers them, but it's not a coherent number set per se. So you're like missing like 6 to 9 or anything like that, and you're like, well, what are those planes that have not been discovered yet? So again, gives you the room as a DM to create your own plane, which I just thought that was such a cool little detail that chapter had.
No, I love that.
I wanted to mention that for sure.
No, that's very good. So then, okay, so if we're going to do this as like a travel guide again, what are the pitfalls for a first-time traveller in 3 top 10? Like, well, first thing you're going to say, like, you're going to the plane, here's your first 3 things that you should just look out for. So what are those? What are the 3 things? Just to wrap it up as a...
Whoa, 3 things. Probably don't trust the people there. Yeah. Bring your own food. And make sure you've got a ticket home.
There we go. I think that's it. That's pretty much what I had as well. I was gonna say don't drink the water was the other one as well. Like so, don't eat the food, and don't keep
hydrated.
Deals. Yeah. And watch out for it. Watch your back. Yeah. No, but I love that. Make sure you got a way home is the top one. Totally. All right, so our last little bit we're going to add to this before we leave the Abyss. Finally, we've made our way out of this journey, but we were going to do a little adventure hook. So what sort of, have you got an idea for one? I've got a little one if we need one.
Why don't you start off and I'll build on yours.
Okay, so I'm going to steal a bit from what I'm doing because I've already got one.
Perfect. So, yes, absolutely. Go for it.
So I'm going to start with what we're doing in our show a bit, which was that you I got players that have accidentally had a portal malfunction and ended up in the plane of import portals, which is kind of going to happen. I think you could play that by starting in Sigil if you're doing a plane or thing, or it could be just a portal somewhere in a building in Warsdeep. There's quite a lot to Torrel or something like that. So you've accidentally gone through. You had the right key for the gate, or someone had the gate key at the same time, and you've walked through the door whilst they walked through the portal.
Ooh.
And you're like, oh bugger, and you've ended up there, and you're just like, oh crap. So there's that one, and it's like, how do you get home is a very simple one. The other one that I quite liked, which was that you could build on that, was that you want to gain control of a demon. I think is always a fun one. So you've been tasked with sort of you've been tasked with gain. I don't know why you'd want to. Why do you want to? Like someone does, but maybe
misguided.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's the key thing. Like we always think it's this idea that we can control them, and maybe again, it's one of those things where I think as a DM you just have to be super confident in it and see if your players go along with. Because obviously sometimes they might be going, oh no, this is bullshit. Why would I want to go along with this? But if you're able to tie in some sort of interest for them, so like either they get lots of money for it, or they will get a share of the power, or anything like that. And I guess it's that sort of thing where you go, okay, hint, it's an evil campaign or something like that. So yeah, you're right. Unless
okay, I could use the actual one I was going to do then if we wanted to do that, which is that you could have it so that a demon has a very powerful artifact. A demon lord has one in their chambers of that they've amassed over years of cult followers, giving them gifts and them gaining like magical artifacts that of corrupting power, and you want that knowledge. You are like a wizard that's eager to know the secrets of something, and so you think, let's go do a heist on a demon lord's fortress, and there you go, and that could be fun.
Because I think what could also be fun going on from that, this idea like, okay, you somehow you defeat a demon, right? Do you get that power straight away, or is it like you've done this, or is there now a power vacuum, and then suddenly there's more and more of these demon lords coming in, fighting it out, as it were? So I think again a little bit of Out of the Abyss there as well. I think that would be quite cool to see what is it like to suddenly have a power vacuum, and that you're in the center of it for whatever reason. I've
got a bit of that as well.
There you go.
Hopefully this comes out once it's happened, because there'd be spoilers for what's about to enter.
We could put spoilers like
spoilers for trying to do that. This is all the thing, but it's just because we've got like it's all going wrong, and so the second in command of the demon lord thinks it's my chance. It's my chance now. I'm gonna have a go. And so that's how I'm managing my level 5 characters. Is that they're going to be
ruthlessness.
They're going to be the hobbits doing this. Do you know what I mean? Don't see me whilst the dragons fight, if you know what I mean. That's sort of like,
I guess, and you know what? That's quite an interesting one as well. That idea that the second in command sees their chance.
Yeah.
So this again, that idea that we're taking power right now, and it's that sort of immediate stuff. So there's ruthlessness, but also there's sort of ingenuity as well. So they're like, if they see a chance, they're like, what are my chances of getting it right now? And it's about that opportunity. So again, having that as a play as well. So they're like, plot twist, there's a big bad guy all along, and you're like, oh no, how did we not see this coming? It's like, of course, everyone's geared towards this thing, no matter how charismatic they are or how charming they are. So yeah, I love that as a second in command. It's just like, oh yeah, I'm here to help you. No, don't worry, I'll protect you because I can see an opportunity where these hobbits will help me.
Exactly, that's exactly it. Yeah, 100%. Fantastic. Okay, so that is the Abyss. We survived the Abyss. Hooray! We made it out.
Thank God.
Right, I feel like I need a shower or something.
I think we all need a shower, several of them.
So yeah, that's the Abyss. So is there any parting words that you have about the Abyss then, Fiona?
Any parting words about the Abyss? It's overwhelming and scary, and that's why I love it.
Yeah,
that is it. I think it's one of those, like I said, it's one of those things, as I've said throughout, I find I can't even imagine what it's like. So that's why I would write down certain phrases or certain lines of description and just say them matter-of-factly to the players and see what their reaction is. Obviously making sure boundaries and session zero stuff aside, because that's going to be important for all these things, but just to see if they go, ooh, and have that reaction going, it's probably not good, it's definitely not good, we need to go. And because that's always a joy I see in players, is when they go, oh fuck.
Crap.
You know?
Totally. Okay, yeah. I think that is
What about you, Hamilton? What's your sort of passing? What will be your
I would
stamp
say
on this?
I find it really enjoyable. I really like the idea of it because I think it's as a DM, it gives you a load of opportunity to bring your own personality to it, which I think is great, which I always think is fun. I think it's got a lot of interesting roleplay potential for you to play a character you may never really have much of a chance to do, which is someone with that sort of chaotic nature to them, that chaotic evil, which is something that actually I think a lot of campaigns focus a lot of that more lawful evil, like I want power to make monies and stuff like that, but I think so I think that's like quite fun about that. And then I would say I think your third point of check with your players before you go in there, but because it is a place of particularities that people might not be interested in. But yeah, that's my sort of parting words on the Abyss.
Very cool. Very, very cool. All right, Hamilton, we've been to the Abyss and back. Do you want to know where we're going next time?
Where are we going next? Oh no, I don't actually know if I want to know. Do we want to know?
I think you do want to know. So next time on the DM's Travel Book Club, we are going to look at the plane of Arborea, a chaotic good plane described as being larger than life and quick as a change of heart. I quite like this because it is a nice comparison to what we've just talked about in the Abyss. So it'd be nice to see sort of a more positive but equally chaotic place. So it'll be quite exciting. But until then, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and catch up on all the previous episodes and VODs of our original show, the DM's Book Club, but also this channel as well. So as we said, smash that like button and hit the bell or whatever it is.
That's things that you women say. We could just do it. Like, come on, let's get in the zone. Like and subscribe. Hit that bell button. Give us the ticks and the talks and the tweet. Oh my gosh, we sound so old.
We are so millennials.
British,
I think
so
is the
millennial
thing.
British people.
We are British people. But yes, if you have enjoyed this, please give it a like. Please share it around. We also want to hear. We also want to hear your experiences of the plane stuff. Have you run a game in the Abyss? Like, what was the most exciting thing about it? What did you do for it? Were you a player scared? Were you a player in the Abyss? Please let us know because we are fascinated to know people's experiences.
And you can do that by following us on Twitter at the DM's Book Club, or you can find us in our Discord channel where we will put a link for that now. And it'll be in the show notes as well, because we have show notes because we're on YouTube.
We do have show notes.
Yeah.
And and towards the end of the video, you'll see links going off to our most recent video of this and also other videos around as well. So all good.
Fantastic. All right, well then until next time, Fiona, there is only but one thing to say, isn't there?
Unfortunately, as a faux pas I did many moons ago, there is only one way to end these kind of shows.
Yeah. See you on the flip side.
See you on the flip side.
Bye.